Hi everyone, welcome to episode 10. My guest today is BJJ brown belt Alain Savoie.
It's time to high five and fist bump. A Jujitsu podcast for the everyday grappler. Let's talk subs. Let's talk positions. Let's talk dominating the mats. Welcome to the Let's Talk Jiu-Jitsu podcast with Raymond Terrence.
My guest today is a BJJ brown belt. He is also an academy owner. He just opened his own academy in Laval, Quebec, Canada with Brazilian Top Team Canada. Alain Savoie, Let's Talk Jiu-Jitsu.
Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Pretty good. Yourself?
Good. Hey, thanks for coming on. I know you actually live here in Montreal and you don't live too far, but this was easier just to get you on Skype.
Yeah. Well, if anyone that lives in Montreal knows, like, it's the turmoil that construction and winter conditions.
I know.
And just to take highways
and there are potholes everywhere, especially right around the corner from my house. There's this one ginormous pothole. I think I could lie down in it. It must be like 4 feet wide, and it's massive. And I understand the cities, like, they don't want to fix them. They don't want to fill them up in the middle of winter because they're just going to become crappy again. But it's pretty bad.
Well, I don't know. I think a lot of the mayors actually encourage destroying cars because they don't like the whole car concept. They prefer bikes and all that.
That's true.
But yeah, I come across the same sort of thing. The holes they look like war craters.
Yeah, they're pretty bad. So Alain, tell us a little bit about how you got into jiu-jitsu, how long you've been doing jiu-jitsu for.
Oh geez, well I started I think like 9 years ago about. And I'd been wanting to start for years before that, but obviously the old story, I saw the second UFC first because that was the first one that came out on VHS. And as everyone else, I was expecting some kind of blood sport movie thing, like, ooh, the Kumite, this is going to be insane. And a couple of the matches were, but as everyone knows, Hoist was destroying everyone, but barely throwing strikes and not even really getting hit. And it was like, what the hell's he doing? And at first I thought, this is boring. But when you saw the replays, it was like, wow, I think that guy's arm went backwards. And it's like, that to me didn't even cross my mind in a fight, right? It's like, I'd seen the Steven Seagal movies where he breaks limbs and stuff like that, but it was like, just in a sports setting, I was like, wow, that's pretty intense. I'm going to have to learn that someday. But I was living in New Brunswick at the time, and there was no jiu-jitsu whatsoever. And even when I first moved to Montreal, it wasn't very common, And then eventually a couple gyms started opening and I looked into it, but just because of my work schedules, it was always like, I don't know if I can make it those nights or whatever. And at the time, Fabio was teaching out of a school called Gamma, which I'm sure most people know of. And they had this thing where you could buy a card for $20 and it gave you access to 3 courses, but anytime. So I figured, that's perfect. I can just buy the card and it won't go to waste if, I can't make it that night or like specific nights. So I figured I'll try that. Well, I rolled I went once, twice, and then I signed up immediately after. I was like, I'm going to make the time for this. This is too incredible. I knew I would love it. I didn't know how much I would love it, And in my head, I figured, nogi's the way to go. It's closer to a street setting. But I think the second class I went, it was a gi class. And I figured, I heard it's good to know that too. So I just bought a gi and then I fell in love with gi. And between the two, I do way more gi than no-gi. And that's kind of how it started. Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. How long were you in New Brunswick for?
Most of my life. I moved to Montreal in 95 for university, and I stayed pretty much. I was 17 when I moved here. So, yeah, that's how old I am.
Do you still have family out there?
Yeah. My parents are still there. I've got lots of aunts and uncles, and that's where I go for Christmas.
Nice. Has the jiu-jitsu changed, or the scene changed out there? Are there any jiu-jitsu schools now, or?
Yeah, there's a few. I know Dana Dickinson had one in Fredericton for a while, although I heard, I'm not sure, I didn't confirm, but I heard he may have closed. I'm not, don't quote me on that. But then I know Shane Rice teaches out of Moncton. I've been meaning to go to his club, but usually when I go down, it's only for like a week, and it's during the holidays, so a lot of the nights are closed, and the nights that it's open, it's usually the night right before I leave, so it's like, I can't make it, but right. I've been really wanting to go to one of his classes. I hear he's incredible.
Nice. And when you came here to Montreal, did you shop around when you were looking for schools, or did you go straight to Gamma to see Fabio?
I chopped around a bit. I made some calls, but I had this one friend that was already in with Brazilian top team. So he was like, "Oh yeah, no, this guy Fabio Holanda, he's teaching here." And I didn't really know Fabio at the time, but I looked into him. I was like, "Oh wow, yeah, he's Brazilian top team. That's Murilo Bustamante." Like, I mean, I was a big Pride fan and a big UFC fan, so I knew that team. And I figured, well, I already have a friend that goes there. He says it's great. He was a good wrestler too, right? So I figured he knows what he's talking about. So yeah, that's how I started at school. And also, like I said, that card that gave me the flexibility to go when I wanted encouraged me too. And it wasn't very far. It was walkable distance at the time.
Oh, nice. Yeah, definitely. And how long have you been doing jiu-jitsu for now?
Like I said, about 9 years, I think.
Wow.
Yeah, I think it's about 9 years.
Wow, no, that's pretty cool. And how have you found the evolution of your jiu-jitsu over time? Were you a scrappy white belt or someone who was a little bit more low key?
Yeah, I mean, I was scrappy, but I think I started pretty much as a guard guy. Like, scrappy just because, like, well, New Brunswick, I grew up, it was pretty common to fight, let's say. Like, I think it's the time I grew up and the area I grew up. It was like, so self-defense was always like a cool thing for me. And then, looking into jiu-jitsu, it's like, wow, it's not only self-defense, it's dominance. Like, you know what I mean? Like, self-defense, the objective is always to get away. But jiu-jitsu is like, no, I'm sticking around. But I started off, like, yeah, as a white belt, I really focused on the guard, but the closed guard. And I had no half guard, I had no open guard. So people, as soon as they'd struggle a bit in my full guard, then once they got that open, it was basically nothing from there to side control. So I developed an underneath compromise side control game. You know what I mean? Just for the time being, because I didn't really know anything else. And over time, then, okay, my half guard got a little better. And then deep half got good. And then my open guard started, really opening up. To me, that was the thing that chained everything together. Like the closed guard, two half guard, and like the amount of submissions and sweeps and setups you can do just going from closed guard to open guard, like, no matter what open guard you like, whether it's De La Hiva or like Spider or whatever, it really opened up the game. Like, I remember one of my friends said, it's like, well, even closed guard, most of the submissions you do, you have to open your guard. It's like, yeah, that's true. I mean, other than X choke and like a couple exceptions, most submissions you're going to do from closed guard, you're going to open your guard. So visualizing it that way, it was almost like, yeah, so maybe I should focus on the open guard as well, since most of the submissions are from there. And I mean, I love sweeps, but to me, what attracted me to jiu-jitsu were the subs, right?
Right.
So I was always like, And over time, well, subs led to sweeps and sweeps led to subs. And then it all becomes jiu-jitsu at the end of the day, but I think most people focus on a certain aspect of the game when they start, and they fill out the rest as they go on, as they progress. Right,
that makes sense. And what do you find at what point did everything start clicking? Was it at blue? Was it at purple?
Well, everything started clicking. I don't think there is such a thing, but like I think the milestones, blue was a big one just because you start learning techniques that work really well for you. You know what I mean? It's like, for me, it was triangles. I mean, arm bars I was getting even as a white belt, but I didn't have to work that as much. Triangles, I wanted to get good at that, and it didn't really come that naturally to me because when I started, I had really scrawny legs. And yeah, I just figured, yeah, that seems like a good position, like even against big guys or whatever. So I really focused on that. And I think I started doing this open guard at blue belt, and I was, getting more advanced belts with it quite consistently. So I was like, yeah, there's something to that. But then again, at purple, that's when you start putting those pieces together. Like, okay, how do these chain? It's almost like, blue belt that you learn your words, and then purple you start learning your sentences and like paragraphs,
Right. And now at brown, where are you at now?
At brown, it's like, I know it's such a cliche, but I started working more my top game. Okay. I don't know why. I think a big part of it is Fabio really makes us work like guard drills, right? So you do top and bottom. And I was just, I don't know, like up until purple, I didn't really care if I got swept. It's like, oh, he's about to sweep me, so I better have my grips so I know what to do as soon as I got swept.
Right.
But at brown, I was like, no, I'm gonna try to stick out this top thing. I'd rather just squish the guy, and maybe old age has something to do with it too. It's like, you're on top and you're just like, I don't feel like moving that much. I'll just,
It's really funny that you say that, though, because I mean, especially at Brazilian Top Team, people are known for their pressure passing and being on top. So when you were saying, hey, like I was learning the guard at a white belt and blue belt, and I like playing open guard, I'm assuming you were having some good success, considering that most of the guys, I'm assuming, wanted to be on top, wanted to try a pass and sub you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, they're monsters, especially at HQ. I mean, all the affiliates really. I mean, but my God, yeah, like they know how to put the pressure on. I mean, I'm not that physically strong, but I think I've gained like a big tolerance for pressure. Like, I mean, I won't tap under just like, oh my God, he's so heavy and this is so uncomfortable. Like, I learned to stay calm and just catch your small little breaths when you can and try to maneuver out of it. But no, they're a handful, definitely. And I mean, I think my top game's starting to evolve more through reverse engineering. Kind of like, okay, well, the guard, what do I want? So when I'm on top, it's like, okay, what do I want to take away?
Well, that's smart.
So it's like it's a way to approach things too. It's like, okay, if you're good at one aspect, well, go the other way around when you're, at the other end of the spectrum. Like, just, okay, well, if I was in his spot, I want to get up on my elbow. So I'm going to like pull his sleeve so he can't get up on his elbow. So,
Well, that's definitely a good way to look at it, especially when you're talking about that you were good at triangles, so you know what you want when you're setting up a triangle, you know where your legs should be or the most optimal position would be. So if someone's trying to do it against you, you know exactly what he's trying to bait you in, right?
Yeah, and I think of the guys that give me a hardest time. Like, so what do they do? Oh, yeah. That ruins my day when they do that. So that's what I try to implement as well.
Nice. Do you have any key things when it comes to the open guard that have really changed your game? Like certain, to have my foot here or to have my knee here. Has anything really worked for you working the open guard?
Yeah, well, I mean, control the hips. I mean, basically get some good grips and at least have one foot on the hips to like keep like push with that foot and pull with the rest. It basically like limits the opponent's like possibilities of being stretched out that way, right?
Nice. Do you play any spider or?
Not that much, to be honest. I mean, I've got nothing against it. My only issue is, like I said, I came maybe more from like okay, well, how can this be applied, in a fight, like a real fight or whatever. And spider, you can learn so much from it, and it's brutal when the guys are really good, especially with the lasso and stuff like that. But to me, it's very, very specific to sports gi jiu-jitsu. You know what I mean? Like, you can't translate it as well as even collar sleeve or things like that in nogi. And in a street fight, well, you're just going to get kneed in the balls all day long. And so, like, in the back of my mind, I'm always like, can he hit me from here? How well can he hit me from here? Like, what can I do to minimize blows if he was to hit me from here? So I think just that mindset, I haven't really focused on spider guard very much. But a lot of people think I do spider guard because I use the collar sleeve, foot on the hip, and the other foot's on the bicep. So it looks kind of spider guard-ish. But no, I've never really been much of a spider guy.
Yeah, I had that same feedback actually, because I play a lot of collar sleeve, and when I went to an open mat last weekend, actually where I saw you, there was guys that from different BTTs that were there that I've never met and never rolled with, and it was fun to kind of roll with different kinds of people and people who kind of don't know your game. I don't know that their game. It's kind of like being in a nice little competition. And a lot of guys were saying, oh, I can't believe you play spider guard. I don't get a lot of that at my school, when in reality I wasn't. I just had my foot on the hip, I had collar sleeve, and that was it. But people are so, I think, shocked when they see that open guard game because they're not used to it. You either have your legs wrapped around in a closed guard or you're in bottom half, but being in that middle ground, I find there are less and less people doing that, especially when I go to other schools and I talk to other people, especially through the podcast, and we talk about common techniques or things that are a little bit more noticeable in their academies compared to elsewhere. I never hear of people playing open guard that way, or seeing a lot of open guard. I don't know if maybe it's a change of time and it's, that philosophy that everything comes around full circle and now it's one trend and then we'll move into something else. But
yeah, no, I mean, I don't see it that often either, but I don't know. People tend to really like it. Like, I mean, if I take the time and show someone, or like sometimes people are like, man, what the hell was that? And you show them and the people that get it usually like it. And I think that going back to the spider thing, I think it's just visually it almost looks spider-ish just because you're pushing on the bicep, right? But you're not holding the sleeve, which is what really the spider guard is. I mean, you're holding the opposite sleeve. You're like the bicep you're controlling with the foot. You're not also holding with like your hand, right? So I think people just having the foot on the bicep, they're like, oh yeah, this is a spider guard or whatever.
No, definitely. And I think anything that has to do with, changing your game and saying, okay, well, now I'm going to start learning this. You end up getting smashed, you know what I mean, for how long? Months, before things start, wrapping together and kind of meshing together. So I think a lot of people are scared too. You learn the closed guard, you learn the half, and then the second they start saying, well, now you're going to open your legs and you're completely going to leave yourself vulnerable, and you're like, oh, I have no idea how I'm going to do this without the guy passing me. I think there's some fear there of learning something completely new and starting over from scratch. Did you find yourself doing that a lot? I mean, all the way to brown belt up to now?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's an ego game, right? I mean, like people say, oh, jiu-jitsu guys, they don't have egos. And I'd say they have less egos maybe. But no, there's still like, those times you roll and like you just got smashed 5 times. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I could sub this guy right now. Or I could get smashed a 6th time, which in the back of your head, it's probably better to get smashed and keep learning what you're learning. But part of you is like, I need that sub, So there's always that little balance, and I mean, you try to stay humble and all that, but there's always, it's fun to win sometimes too.
Yeah. Do you find yourself doing any nogi?
Oh, rarely. I mean, I did for the first few years, and I subbed for a friend that was teaching nogi for a while, but not as often as I should, I admit. I think my schedule kind of doesn't lend itself that well for the classes that are offered as well. It's been one of my goals, though, this year to start doing nogi a little more regularly, because the times I did it, I really liked it. It's like, there's the little learning curve of the grips, but I found that the people I was struggling the most with in nogi were the good gi guys, too. The guys that I only saw in those nogi classes, it's like, they weren't giving me as hard of a time as I'd expect, I guess. I mean, they were, but not. I was expecting to get just killed, like murdered,
Right.
And it wasn't nearly as bad. Because I think the difference, for me anyway, it's a lot of people say nogi's faster, and that's true in a lot of respects as far as the speed of, like, the athleticism, the explosivity, all that stuff. But mentally, I found it way slower because there's far less options. There's far less dangers, too. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
You're not like grips. You're not worrying from inch to inch. It's more like feet. It's like, okay, well, I know if he starts passing my guard, he needs to get this and this, as opposed to like, and I've got quite a bit of distance before he can do that. Rather than gi, it's like, oh, if he gets that grip on my knee, that's gonna screw up my day. And if he grasps the sleeve too, that's gonna be another issue. And so when you take all those things away, it's like, oh, okay, it's like far less options. So I've got more breathing room mentally. Less breathing room physically because it is faster and slipperier and all that stuff. But
right, but the worst that's going to happen is that he'll either get you in a footlock, he's going to Kimura you, triangle, armbar. Exactly. So there's like less possibilities, right?
Exactly. So I mean, at some point I was thinking about that too. Like, some people say, oh, gi is more technical versus nogi, and I mean, I think that's true on a certain level, but not in the way that most people think. It's like, there is a technique and a refinement of the technique in both, obviously, but I think just the fact that there are more techniques in gi makes it more technical.
Right.
You know what I mean? And another thing that that kind of like surprised me too. Well, it shouldn't. It's obvious, but I mean, when you take off the gi, that's still an extra 4 pounds, sometimes 5 with the sweat that you're carrying.
Sure. That's true.
So you take that off, all of a sudden it's like, whoa, I'm way faster than I'm used to being.
No, yeah, and that's why I love tournaments that don't make you weigh in your gi. I love it. They give you the weight classes, and you could just weigh in like shorts and a rash guard, and you don't have to worry about those 3 extra pounds that your gi's basically weighing you out.
Or 4 in our case, like our team gis are 4 now. They used to be 3, I think, but like since the heavier pants.
Right. And do you find yourself worrying more about toe holds and knee bars at Brown? Do you find that you're getting a little bit more exposure to that?
Yeah, of course. But honestly, I don't find the change as drastic as when you turn blue with wrist locks.
Hmm.
Like, because, I mean, you're not really worried about your grips in that way when you're just a white belt gripping whatever. And I see it also, like, when I'm rolling with white belts, my brain always goes, wrist lock, wrist lock, wrist lock. And I'm like, no, you can't, you can't, you can't. Uh, I mean, because you're still allowed straight ankle locks, right? From white belt on. So, like, I mean, obviously the setups are different, but there's always a chance that somebody can, like, foot lock you that way. Obviously, there's certain things you have to adapt. Like, for example, I really like the waiter sweep, right, from deep half. Well, I mean, I've always had to worry about the straight ankle lock. Like, that's one of the defenses. So you cross your feet, that's not a problem. But once you're brown, they can just turn around and go for the toe hold,
Right.
which is how Fabio got Kenny Florian, I believe, in a tournament he did in Canada. Like, I think it's on YouTube. Good match. But Fabio reminded me of that too. And I remember, I think I was a blue belt or a purple belt when he told me. And I asked him straight up, like, well, should I give up this technique? Because, I mean, once I become a brown or a black belt, it's kind of like obsolete. He said, no, you're good at it. Keep doing it. You'll troubleshoot it. And sure enough, like, especially in gi, I figured out some things to prevent it. Like, you just grab the lapel from, like the arm you have under the leg. You grab the lapel so he can't turn around. So as long as you can't turn around, you can't go for your foot. And I mean, it's not really a stagnant position anyway. You get into waiter and you go straight forward like the sweep, right? So, but if he sees it coming, there's always that possibility you can turn around and just toe hold the crap out of you, and it's a tight one too.
I find that in nogi, the nogi classes really help out for that. The fact that you can go for at all levels, go for toe holds and knee bars and whatnot. Because then when you get in the gi, I mean, especially at purple, I find myself crossing my feet when I'm in bottom half, if I'm ever like deep bottom half, because I know that hand will eventually come around and grab the toe hold. So the nogi classes have been helping a lot. Just to know that it's there and to recognize that it's there, because I know later on, it might be a shock for some people. I speak to a lot of people that talk about in their academies how they do like zero foot locks. Like they don't see toe holds, they don't see heel hooks and stuff like that. And that's, it's pretty sad, because later on, I mean, if it's just a casual guy and your everyday jiu-jitsu guy, it's one thing. But if you're going to compete, it's a different story. Like competitions like Grappling Industries, where even at intermediate no-gi, you can do toe holds and straight knee bars. And you could also do it in the gi from purple belt and up.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't even realize that.
Yeah, I'm actually competing this weekend at Grappling Industries Boston.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, I'm going to do I'm doing gi and no gi, and then I was looking through the rule set just to make sure I was good to go, and then I noticed that in the gi that I was allowed to do toe holds and straight knee bars. And I was like, well, I don't do a lot of those like in my gi class. In no gi class we do it, but in gi it's completely different depending on where the guy's what he's holding on to and whatnot. So that should be pretty interesting. I think more and more tournaments are doing that. They're getting people exposed to it, and maybe it's to kind of waken up that toe hold beast or heel hook beast, where academies are kind of forced into teaching it to their students.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, I mean, then there's the side, Vinny Mangali says they don't work, so it's no, like I think, yeah, I mean, the more you're exposed to early on, the more but at the same time, I also see the other side. It's like, yeah, there's things that you may want to focus on in the beginning, and then once you have those kind of fundamentals, kind of grow from there. But yeah, at the same time, I do find brown belts kind of late to start, leg locks.
Would
like
you start at purple?
Together. Well, for nogi, I'd start like maybe blue purple. Yeah. For nogi, at the moment, I'd keep it brown just to keep it with the BJJ, blah 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 blah. But I guess it would depend on the class. Like if my students were like, no, we want to do leg locks, I'd be like, yeah, okay, fine, as long as we're all in accordance. Like, we all agree we're doing leg locks. Just be careful, and like I'd be open to it. No problem.
Right.
For heel hooks, well, again, I would start with care. People tend to get hurt way more with those for some reason, even though toe holds are, I mean, toe hold injury, I think, is just as, if not worse than
I know, it's crazy. I was talking to to Corey Joseph about this, the professor at 10th Planet here in Montreal, and we were talking about that. And he's like, it's no different from if someone grabbed onto your arm and was doing an arm bar. Like if you really want to jack your arm, you know, and like really like break it. I mean, the option is there to do it, but he doesn't do it, right? He goes all the way, maybe goes a little bit further, and then you end up tapping or trying to escape. At that point, it's pretty much too late anyways. But I mean, it's the same thing if you're going for a heel hook. I mean, you can go for a heel hook safely, right? You don't have to jack the person's leg all the way, and the other person, it's up to the other person to acknowledge that they got caught, just like any other submission.
Well, that's true in many respects, but I think I'd compare the heel hook or toe hold more to like an Americana than an armbar. You know, because an armbar, it's like, well, you'll hear the pops before you get injured, and the injury, as shitty as it is, it like you can, you know, have a relatively normal arm afterwards. But like an Americana or a Kimura, it's like, yeah, I feel it, pow, and then your arm's never going to be quite the same.
Right.
You know?
Right. Yeah, I think that's a good philosophy that a lot of schools are starting to adopt, is when they start doing leg attacks, that they solidify the position and then like they call it. You know what I mean? They say, okay, well, like I'm super tight on you, like the knees are pinched, I'm like full on heel hook on you, I got you. You know what I mean? There's no need to torque it or anything.
I'm totally down with that too. Like, I mean, knee bars, I don't know, I find knee bars, like you feel the pain more than, you know, heel hooks or toe holds. Mm-hmm. Like, honestly, I didn't really realize how bad toe holds could be until Fabio caught me in one once. And my foot's pretty flexible, so I was like, no, my ankle's fine. All of a sudden, my knee started like just like a stabbing right in my knee, and I tapped right away, thankfully. But I was like, oh my God, okay, it's not just the foot that can get torn off, it's the knee too. It's, you know.
Yeah, that's horrible, especially the guys that go for the toe hold and then they step over you and go belly down. Like, that's just, it's gross.
That's where I was. But yeah, it was, you know, it's one of those things, like you recognize the grips, I mean, I blew my knee out a couple times. The last time though, it was one of my training partners, he had this tight knee bar. I mean, tight, but I had wiggle room, right? I mean, it was just solid. And because I had wiggle room, I figured, maybe I can knee slice out of this quickly. And as I started to, he arched, so it went just on one side instead of both. And I didn't even have to tap. He felt the pop, like, you know. It was like, oh no.
It's so bad from all those like tiny little mistakes. I did the same thing when I was at it was an open mat when I had first joined BTT, and there was Professor who was there, Mark. Was there, episode 1 of the podcast, and there was Charles, who amazing. I mean, he's a doctor and did he get his black belt?
That's a good question. Like, I did technique with him. He's either black or a brown. But...
Yeah. Anyways, he was there, and I was just casually. We were just kind of doing like some warm up drills, and then we did what we call a light roll in brackets. And during that light roll, I was in top half, but standing up, and I was like, I'm just gonna pivot backwards, and I was like, this is a genius idea. So I pivoted backwards, but what he did is he ended up squeezing his legs together as I was pivoting, and totally tore my MCL. Just from like super like just nothing. It wasn't like an intense roll, and it was kind of pointless, but just from one stupid movement, and then I was out, you know, for months, like in rehab and having a stupid brace on, and it was really bad.
Oh yeah, I've torn like both my MCLs, one of them twice. One was as a white belt trying to take down. Well, I did take down this big guy, but as I was taking him down, I felt the pop, you know, and it did. I mean, it hurt when it cracked, but it wasn't too bad. And I kept rolling, but there was this one angle that was just death. And then the next day it swelled up and it got really bad. And yeah, I was out for a few months there too. And another time was just silly. I mean, I was rolling with Fabio, who's on top, and he was going for a wrist lock. And I tried to just, you know, bridge to create space so I could move my elbow a bit. And in turning, my foot got caught on the mat. My knee kept going and just went bop, you know. Oh. Same injury, and then the last time was that knee bar I just mentioned, but that was my fault. So, but I mean, I don't know. A lot of people are so scared of, like, you know, like, I mean, I had to deal with getting liability insurance and stuff like that to teach, right? And it's actually quite hard in Quebec. I think there's this stigma of like, Jiu Jitsu, it's about choking and breaking limbs, that they think, people get injured all the time. It's like, Yeah, but not as much as judo or football or hockey or any other sport. Like, it's one of those things. If anything, I think, I mean, it's a contact sport. I mean, so you'll probably get hurt a bit more than, let's say, badminton or, which you can blow your knees in that too. I mean, like tennis injuries and badminton, like just the running back and forth and stopping, whatever. But I think it's just when you read the description and like the goal of the martial art, some people are a little scared. It's like, oh my God, you break arms. It's like, yeah, but it's so rare that people get really injured in class. Competition, that's a different thing because people go for the kill. But, and also like you don't always know the opponent. So you're kind of like, well, screw that guy.
That's really funny that you mentioned liability insurance, because I went through the same thing multiple times for my karate school when I was running it. And it was like next to impossible to explain even karate. Like everyone's seen the Karate Kid, everyone knows what karate is, but you try to explain that to an insurance company and what you do in your activities, and even they don't know what questions to ask you to even quote you for coverage.
Yeah, no, I know. And well, I mean, one company was really annoying because they made me fill out the whole form and what martial art. They even had Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as a checkbox,
Oh, wow.
But filling out those forms are like pretty long, like 5 pages of this, and all like the. Anyway, I won't get into it. But at the end of it all, the only email I got is like, "We don't cover Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu." It's like, well, why have it in the box? Why did we go through all those steps? Like, I called you people. You could have just said, "Yeah, we don't do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu."
That's really funny. So speaking of that, so you opened up a affiliate of BTT in Laval, and you had your first class last week. So tell me a little bit about that process and what made you, want to open up your own place. And
well, honestly, it was just kind of by chance because I mean, like, I was open to the idea of my main job is I compose music for like TV and films and stuff like that. But I mean, between contracts, it's fun to make a little extra income. So I figured, you know what, I might go visit some martial arts schools in the area and see if they're looking for any grappling or any, And there was one school I knew of, and it was this White Crane Kung Fu school in Galerie Laval. And I went knocking on the door, and the manager was there. I said, I'm just looking to see if you guys are looking into any grappling. Because I mean, I did Kung Fu like maybe 3 years when I was a kid, and I know their grappling isn't, let's just say it's not their focus,
right.
So. Figured that like their focus like get back up, stay up. It's like, yeah, but
the White Crane.
Yeah, top of it. It's so I figured, I'll offer my services. And he was immediately, oh, you saw the sign in the window. I'm like, no. So they were renting that space, and that got me thinking. It's like, well, yeah, that could maybe be better. I mean, instead of just like being part of another, like a Kung Fu school that does like one night a week, maybe I can do a couple nights and it could be my class. It'd be, so I figured, I'll talk to Fabio, see what he thinks. And he was like, yeah, absolutely, man, go for it. It's cool. And, so I figured, why not? Like, I'll take the risk. And especially that I could just do like 6-month lease, to a year or whatever. I figured, I'll try it out, see how it goes. And if, worst comes to worst, at least it's not like I opened up my own gym. So
you don't have to worry about like the expense of a long-term lease and like electricity and all that other stuff.
Exactly. And like this Kung Fu gym, for whatever reason, have mats everywhere. So it's like, perfect. It's nice. Like, I mean, the only thing that they don't have mats is on the walls, but I mean, it's a pretty large space, and I just put cones next to the wall so people don't, sweep each other into the walls or whatever. But otherwise, it's great. It's nice. It's clean. It's a nice area near the Montmorency Metro too. So it's somewhat convenient. So I figured, I'll take that risk. Why not? I mean, like Jiu-Jitsu, it's one of those things. If you start, you know how addictive it is, right?
Yeah, for sure. I actually saw a picture of the place on Facebook that you posted, and I don't know if it's where you train, but I saw weapons and swords and all these things on the wall.
Yep, that's the place.
I don't know how you're gonna stop Jiu-Jitsu guys from going on the wall and like grabbing a sword.
Yeah, well, no, that's one of the because they're not my weapons, right? They're the Kung Fu school owners, and I was like, don't touch those, they're not ours. And also, it's extra incentive not to roll into the walls because then you'll have some size and stuff falling on you, which is never a good time, But like I said, I put like these cones, like so anyone that lives in Montreal is used to orange cones. I put them all along the walls so that like it gives you an extra like 2 feet before you actually have to reposition,
Okay, that's good. And have the owners of the Kung Fu school, questioned Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or wondered what it was, or did they know right away what it was when you mentioned it?
No, well, I mean, of course they've heard of it, but no, it was fun because at some point, like, I was just talking about it. And they didn't like, you mentioned Kimura, and they're like, oh, what's that? And so I showed it because it was the owner and the manager, and I got the manager who's a bit younger and bit bigger than me, whatever. And I get him in a Kimura. Like they were saying, oh, how can you use this? And I said, oh, self-defense. If somebody grabs you from behind, you can go over the elbow, get your grips, and then I just broke his grip. And then just to show him, and then the owner's like, no, put him back. I want to see him get out. Because that's his like number one, I think, I assume, right? So okay. I'm like, okay. So I put him back in, and I just like, he tries to get out, so I extend a bit. And that feeling the first time you're ever put in like in an armbar but fully extended, how vulnerable you feel?
Right.
I think that's how he was feeling, because I turned the Kimura into like a straight arm lock, not changing the grip, but just right. Yeah. And the owner was like, "Go on, get out." And the guy was like, No. It's pretty. It's like you could tell he was kind of scared to just move, because if I go an extra inch, it's gonna,
Yeah, I think it's definitely a culture shock. We spoke about it a bit, but when you come from a traditional martial art and then you see something else that looks quite effective and is something completely different than what you're used to. A lot of instructors or school owners that have been doing a traditional martial art for a long time are really scared of change. They're really scared to say, my martial art is not as good as someone else's martial art, and there's this stigma of saying I'm the best and karate's the best or kung fu's the best or taekwondo's the best. And those, I'm not talking about the more traditional old school academies. So it'll definitely be curious over time to see, how instructors will adapt themselves, or even if it will happen, because eventually all these traditional schools have to turn into non-traditional schools. There's no way that millennials are taking karate and realizing this is the only thing that's out there, and I'm the best and there's nothing else. With so much access to information, with the UFC and everything going on, I mean, grappling is always in your face, so it's not all about one style anymore. There's so many things and people will question it. So I think all these traditional schools eventually will just fade away. I know people won't like me saying that, but I mean, I come from a very traditional Kyokushin karate background, and you see them more and more, they just dissipate. They end up closing, and there's never new ones popping up. You never see a new traditional karate school opening up. The only thing you see is schools closing.
The thing is, though, I think it just takes the right movie. You know what I mean? Like the Karate Kid is what really popularized like karate in the 80s, right? I mean, like and Bruce Lee popularized kung fu and all this stuff. And I completely agree with you as far as like efficiency and stuff, but again, it depends on your objectives, right? It's like if you just want to do straight up self-defense, well, Jiu-Jitsu is amazing, but it's not a quick fix. You know what I mean? It's like it's a marathon. It's not like a sprint, right? So I mean, if you just want to know how to handle yourself in the street, it might not be your go-to right away, because as much as I love Jiu-Jitsu, and that's my number one by far. I mean, like, but against a dude with a knife, it's a different dimension, or like if you're up against a wall, or you're in a really, in an elevator, like they're different things. And also, I think a lot of the traditional things, I mean, look at it this way, Tai Chi's still around, right? But I don't think anyone thinks they can fight using Tai Chi. I mean, I'm sure there's a few, but like generally, right. Generally, I think they're doing it more for like just the physical, exercise and that whole side of it. And I think, well, not all martial arts, but most martial arts offer something valuable, even technically. Sometimes you'll just modify a technique for it to work. Like maybe in and of itself it doesn't work. Like Aikido is a good example. I don't find Aikido is very practical generally. But you can apply those techniques in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, just changing, the grip or like the context. Because I mean, to me, like when you see them do their exhibitions, if you want, yeah, I mean, you're not going to catch somebody punching you for real and putting them in a wrist lock like that. I mean, unless, and again, that's the other thing. I think most people that do martial arts will probably be able to handle themselves against most people that don't do martial arts.
Right.
For the most, I mean, there's exceptions to every rule, but I mean, even if you're in like a quote unquote not, that efficient martial art, well, the fact you're training a few times a week, it puts you in better shape. Your reflexes are a little sharper. You've got a certain confidence, whether it's founded or unfounded. But the thing I like about jiu-jitsu is that it gives you an edge even on those people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's almost like we know this kind of secret ninja philosophy stuff that no one knows naturally. Because, I mean, everyone knows how to throw a punch. Not necessarily well, but, just
they can still throw their hand in the air
exactly,
and clip something.
Exactly. Everyone's thrown a punch at something at some point. Like, like make a fist and just throw it, that way. Or haymaker, or like anyone can do that. But jiu-jitsu, what I really like about it is that it really sharpens your non-instincts. Like somebody's on top of you punching you in the face, the natural reaction is usually try to push them off or turn around. But those are the things never to do in jiu-jitsu,
Yeah, that's true.
So it really, it's like developing new reflexes and instincts to basically make you a better fighter. And the thing I like about it too is that the angles, the philosophy, like everything that goes behind it can be applied to other martial arts as well. Like distance, grips. I mean, yeah, it's to me, it is the most fun. And the thing that sets it apart too, I mean, this has been said many times, but it's the rolling. Like we're able to like roll hard,
go 100% all the time.
Exactly. And without necessarily injuring or like, injuring or like, killing your partner, which you could do in theory. I mean, when he taps, that's the beauty of the tap, right? It's like, it makes me know that I won and it makes you know that I won, or vice versa. Like if I tap, it's like, I know he won. Otherwise I wouldn't have tapped. It's, you can argue why, you can come up with all the excuses and the reasons why you tap, but at the end of the day, you still tapped. So that keeps the ego in check, but it also allows you to try all the techniques that you've learned or that you've, explored, or like, yeah, this works in technique, but how does it work in rolling? Or how does it work when the guy doesn't let you? Or, he's doing everything to prevent you from doing it. What do you do then? And I think it's through like, that's why it's not a quick fix. Like a lot of martial arts, like, okay, well, if they do this, just jab him in the throat and like punch him in the, like, here and run, which in a lot of respects that can work, but things don't usually go the way you plan. So jiu-jitsu, the thing is you've seen 100 or 1,000 different scenarios for the same situation. So he does this, okay, I've got this. If he does that, I've got that. Like,
Yeah, definitely. I think in a lot of martial arts too, especially a traditional, I mean, you'll find bullshit in everything. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter where you go. There'll be stuff that would be super practical that you use on a daily basis, and there'll be other things that that will never work. Like standing on one leg and like doing a jumping front kick, and like it's just not practical. It just doesn't make any sense. And I think every martial art has something where you kind of sit back and you're like, well, when would I use that? Like it looks great, but it's not practical. Whereas jiu-jitsu, everything seems pretty practical. I mean, apart from like the fancy, like, we could talk about donkey guard and all that stuff that's just silly, you know what I mean? It's kind of funny, but I mean, people make it effective, you know what I mean? But it's not stuff that you would use all the time and in every single role. But I find jiu-jitsu really has that core that, yes, there's a variation or 10 variations to a single move, but you can actually use those 10 variations.
That's very true, but I think all the martial arts have suffered from the same thing. I think like even kung fu and like the karate ones and all that, at some point it was all practical. But just look at judo, right? Which is what jiu-jitsu comes from at the core. I mean, but the judo jiu-jitsu came from is not the same judo of today. Judo of today is really sport focused. I mean, it's gotten to the point where you can't break a grip with two hands. You need to break the grip with just one hand. I mean, you used to be able to attack legs too. You can't do that anymore. So it gets less and less and less practical. Well, jiu-jitsu, the more the competitions go, you start seeing stuff like, worm guard and lapel and like, donkey guard, as you said, or like these things that are like in competition, it can totally work. But when it goes back to the roots of like, Brazilian street fighting, I don't see anyone pulling spider guard and, Brazilian street fighting.
Yeah, no, but it's definitely fun to see other instructors outside the realm of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu be open to other things. to be open of the thought of there's something that could complement what I'm currently doing. You see it in karate schools too. We have Professor Phil that teaches out of a karate school on Wednesday nights in Terrebonne. I actually had one of his students on, a police officer, he was talking about how the head instructor comes by, who always, observes the classes, and that he's actually, I think he's a purple belt if I'm not mistaken. And even though he did years and years and years of karate, he sees the benefit of jiu-jitsu and how it will complement all of his experience that he has in karate. And I think, those instructors are the ones that are really going to be able to give something back to their students, because they're not stuck in that little bubble.
Absolutely, and vice versa too. I mean, like it's easy to knock a lot of like other martial arts because everyone can just type in BJJ versus and leave the rest open. You'll see some white and blue belts destroy some black belts of pretty much every other martial art. I mean, the only video I saw, I tried it the other way around, like whatever versus, like even Muay Thai versus Jiu-Jitsu, because sometimes they always put the winner first, right?
Right.
And the one I saw where the BJJ guy lost was some guy I never heard of, and the Muay Thai guy was Pele, who's also a BJJ black belt. I mean, it's like, okay, I guess. But so it's easy to crap on all the other martial arts because that's not their. I mean, there's a few things on that. Like one thing is I think Jiu-Jitsu, what makes it really valuable is that it starts literally from the ground up. So you start in the most compromised positions possible, so if you're comfortable in the most compromised positions possible, well, the rest starts getting easier, as opposed to like most other martial arts. You start from a very favorable position. You're in your stance, you've got your guard up, you're like, everything's fine. Like, it's like you're squaring off with another karate master and stuff like that. But from our point of view, it's like, yeah, but I just take him down. Then what,
Yeah,
it's true, but I mean, if that guy, UFC taught us anything. It's like if they've got good takedown defense and they've got a little bit of wrestling skill, it's not that easy. And while you're standing up, that guy's going to have the edge.
Yeah. Do you find that there are other martial arts that complement jiu-jitsu, like people that transition from more traditional stuff that come to jiu-jitsu that like really help them out? Because I know wrestling is one of them. When we get guys that try to transition from wrestling into jiu-jitsu, you could tell that they understand their hips and weight distribution and whatnot. Do you think there are any others out there that kind of would complement jiu-jitsu?
Well, judo, like, right? It's just straight up judo. Yeah, I mean, judo to me is like wrestling with the gi, right? It's like wrestling with grips.
Yeah.
But
I actually, there's a lot of traditional judo schools that don't teach a lot of ground. I used to do judo, and I went back actually to the school that I started in. This was maybe about 9 years ago. That I did some judo. I was curious to kind of think outside the box and see if maybe I could work on takedowns and whatnot. And then I really got into it, and I realized I was way too old for judo, and it was way too taxing on my body. But they were really interested in anything I had to say about jiu-jitsu, anything that had to do with the ground game, because they have their like a curriculum, I would say, in judo of like the foundation of ground techniques, like Kimuras and stuff like that. But the second I got out of that, I was like, oh, you could open up the lapel and do this. They were super, super interested by it. But yeah, I think that's probably the one that relates the closest.
Absolutely. And even if they're not focusing on the ground game at all, they're working out the right muscles. They're working on like their posture. They've got grips. They've got things like they've already sharpened their tools for jiu-jitsu, even though they don't necessarily know how to apply it in a jiu-jitsu setting. They're still like, they're usually the guys that give me the hardest times, like, oh, cool, new white belt. And all of a sudden you're like, oh man, he was a handful. Yeah, he's a judo white belt. Oh, okay. Obviously their objective is different. So if they're on their back, they don't know all the options a jiu-jitsu guy knows, because jiu-jitsu, we don't lose points necessarily for just being on our back. For takedown, yeah, or sweep, sure. But like, the fact you're on your back, it's like, wow, I've got 4 limbs to attack now instead of just 2.
yeah, just pull guard. I think that's why we get into the habit of Googling or Facebooking people in your tournament bracket to see if they're black belts in anything else, especially judo, so if you have to sit on your ass or not.
Yeah, and that's one thing that we're kind of lucky for is like against wrestlers is that we're not allowed to slam, right? Because man,
yeah.
Like, honestly, in a street fight, I think a wrestler would be one of the scariest things.
Oh, for sure. I actually watched Man, I watched a few Fight to Win pros over the weekend because I had missed a few, and I think it was the last one, like the 100, if I'm not mistaken. There was some. So in Fight to Win Pro, in the gi and in no gi, you're allowed slams, and that's from like purple belt up, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not too sure if the blue belts were allowed, but it was brutal. You know, you'd see some guys like try to go, you know, like pull guard, or even in bottom, you have bottom guard. They would close their legs, the guy would stand up and just like jump in the air and slam the guy down on his head. It was brutal.
Sure. Well, it's like ADCC. I mean, you see a lot of guys get knocked out just from triangles, right? Because they get picked up and boom, it's like, ooh.
Yeah.
True, you're allowed to do that there.
But it makes it worse, I think. You know, for stuff like triangles, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I don't know where I heard that, but if you were to pick up somebody and slam, yeah, it sucks for you because you're getting your head slammed in the ground. But doesn't it make the submission tighter?
Well, I think it's more the guy's using a lot of energy as he's being choked. And I mean, the quick fix is to underhook the leg so he can't properly slam you, but he could still, you know, it could still hurt. But I mean, as we saw, you know, that classic Rampage versus Arona fight in Pride, where he just picked him up all the way and knocked him out with that slam. It was just brutal. And there's an ADCC where Jeff Glover gets knocked out too. He had a good triangle on the guy. I forgot who he's fighting, but gets picked up and just slammed. And he doesn't even look out, but you see his legs just kind of open, and the guy just passes his guard, and then you realize, oh shit, he's out. He's like, you know.
That's shitty too. Like it can be anything that has to do with competitive jiu-jitsu. I think that whole slamming thing should be taken out of it. You know, if it's like brutal jiu-jitsu.
I disagree with that one because again, like the roots of jiu-jitsu is fighting, right? So I mean, in a fight, you can get slammed, you can get spiked on your head, you can like all these nasty things. And at first, I used to hate the point system for jiu-jitsu because it's like, points, you know, what does that have to do with fighting? And Fabio pointed out, it's like, you know, all the things you get points for is basically you're advancing your striking position. You know, like you take someone down, you're on top, you get 2 points because you're in a better striking position. You pass the guard, you're in a better striking position. You get knee on stomach, you're in a better striking position. You get mount, you're in a better striking position. Back, same thing. You know, it's
that's smart. That makes
once
sense.
I saw it that way, it's like, yeah, that does make a lot of sense. You know, it's like the only dispute I have with the point system is for reversing from underside. You know what I mean? Because like you're reversing that position into the same position,
right?
But reversed. Like I mean, like you've got top side control, and let's say I reverse that. Well, now I've got top side control. Like, I understand if you reverse mount, you don't get points, because if you reverse mount, you're probably in his guard, right? So you're not necessarily in a great position. You're in a better position, but you're not in a great position.
It's like that seesaw battle of the 50-50. You know,
exactly.
I'm on top, I'm on the bottom. I'm on top, I'm on the bottom.
Exactly, but they get points for that.
Right.
You know, as opposed to reverse side, like the guy that passed your guard gets 3 points, but if you reverse them, you don't get any points for that, because it's not technically from a guard, and any sweep has to come from a guard. So it's, but otherwise it's like, I started seeing the value in the point system, and I never thought I would. At first I was like, points, whatever. That's just to decide who wins, but what does it matter? But no, once you start seeing it from a striking point of view, even though we don't strike in jiu-jitsu, that's where it comes from.
Right. Yeah, it makes sense. Have you competed a lot? Are you a competitive jiu-jitsu guy?
I used to be, up until Purple. And ever since Purple, well, it was around the same time they started banning all the competitions in Montreal, or in Quebec, right? And I think that life, age, all together was like, well, I don't know. I'm not that competitive in nature. I'm competitive with myself, which is why I like to compete. It was like, well, it'll test my skills, like, you know. And but the times I did the best were usually the times I was like, I would train for it. But maybe a week or two before, I was just so sick of being stressed about it. I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to go. I'm going to lose. I'm going to enjoy the rest of my day. And that's when I did the best. Okay. You know, I'd be like, I can't lose to a guy from that team. So I triangle him like, you know, okay, well, I still have enough energy. Not too bad. Okay, I'll do the next one. It's like, I'd win that. It's like, okay, well, I got silver. It's not so bad. Like, you know. But,
yeah, I'm the same way. I go in super casual. I used to get super pumped up and listen to music before matches, but it got me so riled up, and then I would lose sight of what I was going there to do. So, you know, over a span, I would say maybe the past 2 years, whenever I compete, it's just, for me, it's honestly another role. And that's what works best for me. You know, I'm going, I'm going to have a great time with this guy that I don't know. I'm going to try to choke him out. I'm going to try to win. But I go in very casual about it, because if I put too much pressure on myself, I get too stressed out, and then my jiu-jitsu is just horrible. It sucks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, that's just it. I mean, like your nerves and like the mental game is a big part of it. I mean, but one thing that happened that was interesting, that maybe 2 years ago, this guy, I don't know, he just must have had a bad day, but he picked a fight with me on the Metro, and no one got hurt, like, thankfully. But I mean, he's just one of those guys, like, I don't know, like I looked at him and he didn't like it. I had my earbuds in and he was just yelling at me, so I take out the earbuds, like, oh, you don't know who I fucking am, blah 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 blah, and he was getting in my face. So I just stood up and grabbed him. And he was swinging the whole time, but, I had, like, both hands inside, so I was just, avoiding the hits. And then I picked him up, but the thing that saved him from going to the ground is he was grabbing the poles. And then when I picked him up, like, people were like, oh, man, so they split us up and he ran out. But the thing that really, like, kind of made me go, yeah, there's something to this jiu-jitsu thing, is that I wasn't even adrenalized. I wasn't worried. I wasn't, I was thinking of every step. I could have easily headbutted him. I could have, like, struck him, but I was like, he hasn't connected with me yet, so why up the legal antes if you don't have to?
That's funny. I had that same. I honestly, I don't get into fights. I'm not an aggressive person. This morning, I drove to work, and I came into the parking lot, and there was this truck there, and there was two guys that were shoveling the front walkway. So they were getting rid of all the ice, and they were putting salt down. The problem is that the truck was right in the middle of this parking lot where I needed to go in and park so I can get into work. So
right.
I rolled down my window, and I said, hey, do you think you can move your truck? And then the guy in French said, oh, like, just let him go around. Mm-hmm. And, like, in going around involved me backing up on an icy, like, pathway because they hadn't salted yet. And it just, like, it would have been really bad. So I ended up honking my horn. So I closed my window, honked my horn to let the guy know, hey, like, I'm still here. Can you move your truck?
Right.
So the guy was cursing outside the car. So this is, by the way, it's like 6:15 in the morning. I hadn't had coffee yet. I'm, like, thinking about competing on the weekend. I don't want to start, like, some turmoil. It's too early in the morning. But I ended up getting out of my car because I saw the guy was getting all riled up. So I got out of my car and I walked around, and the guy is holding this giant, like, metal shovel, and then he starts bolting towards me in an aggressive nature with this metal shovel, and the guy was literally about to, like, try to knock me out with the shovel. And it's 6:15 in the morning, and all I asked him to do was to move his truck. And I didn't, like, overreact. I wasn't stressed out. I didn't freak out or anything like that. By the time he got face to face with me, I was like, buddy, it's early in the morning. Like, why are you so aggressive? Like, I need to go park. There's going to be 100 employees, like, coming in the next few minutes. If it's not me, it's going to be somebody else that tells you to move your truck. Can you just move it a little bit to the side? And then he calmed down. He got in his truck and he moved it to the side. But, like, most people who would have stood there, they would have freaked out with this giant guy yielding a metal shovel running towards you. They would have freaked out. But you're absolutely right. I think jiu-jitsu brings some calmness to situations like that.
Yeah, and, like, in my situation, like, I saw the confusion in the guy's face when I just stood up and grabbed him. Like, I think that's the last thing he expected me to do. I think he was thinking, like, yeah, but that sensation you get, like, if I'm not going to do anything, he's just going to sucker punch me. Mm-hmm. Like, he was riled up and his fist clenched, and I was just like one of those situations, like, yeah, I'm not letting this happen. But the fact that I just fought back, it was just like, what? Because he was bigger than me too, right? So, but I'm not a strong jiu-jitsu guy, but the fact I do jiu-jitsu, I'm stable, let's say. Like, against somebody who doesn't do martial arts, it's like, it's surprisingly strong, I suppose, but more structurally than, muscularly or whatever. But he was trying to take me down, I wasn't moving, and, like, he was trying to punch, I wasn't having it, and then I just picked him up like it was nothing. So
the guy was probably like, what the hell is going on right now?
Oh, he ran out in the next stop, and what's funny is I saw him again at my Metro, which is much further away, like maybe 2 weeks later, and he was in front of me in line. He turned around, saw me, and it took me a second to, like, recognize him, but as soon as he saw me, he pushed a woman out of the way and just jumped over the thing and ran out again. But again, like, I think people are a little like dogs. Like, if they smell fear, they're going to be their tough guy. Mm-hmm. But once they realize, like, you know what, this guy's not budging, well, the dog calms down, right?
Yeah, and guys like that who are so confrontational are not fighters. They're not martial artists. You know that the guy is getting in your face and being all aggressive is not the guy that's training jiu-jitsu 4 times a week or doing, another martial art, because people don't have that type of demeanor.
Well, the "you don't know who I am" line I've heard so many times outside of clubs, and you're right. I don't know who you are. I know who most fighters are. I've been to like a lot of the gyms, or if not, I know you by reputation, and I have no idea who you are. So you're probably not someone I need to worry too much about unless you have a weapon. So
Yeah, I have to say I use that line whenever, because I've gotten into some issues with like when driving. You know, like someone will honk, they'll pull over when you're parking, and then they get out and they start freaking out. I put a Jiu-Jitsu sticker on the back of both of my cars, so if ever people get out and I just point to the sticker, I'm like, this is a horrible idea. I think you should get back in your car. That, and I kind of leave it at that. I just look at the sticker, buddy. And half the time people have no idea what Jiu-Jitsu is, but you know what I mean? Like it says, there's a guy, our symbol is this guy with his hand up, and it says Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Like you kind of have to get the hint,
Well, I pulled that card once too. I have to admit, like this guy was getting in my face, and I was wearing my coat over my hoodie, so I just pulled out my hoodie logo, and I said, "You really want this to happen?"
And don't you feel super badass when you do it too?
Well, that's the other thing. I think most fighters know to check the ears and the brows.
Yeah.
Before engaging, and
we're trying to avoid conflict. That's the goal behind this, right? Is try to avoid conflict.
Well, that's the other thing. Well, I don't know, like necessarily, but I was way more confident or cocky, whichever, as a blue belt than I am now. Because I think the more you progress in jiu-jitsu, the more you realize it's like you don't know what can happen in a fight. There's so many factors that it's like, even though like there's a good 99% chance I'm going to walk out of this no problem, there's that 1% that maybe this guy's tougher than you are. Maybe this guy's carrying a knife. Maybe this guy's got 4 friends that I didn't spot. Like, there's all these extra factors that it's like, it's usually smarter to avoid the fight if you can,
Yeah, especially in jiu-jitsu, I think being able to roll, and when you roll with lower belts and the lower belt catches you in something, I think that it comes from that too. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't matter how much it just might not be your day.
Yeah, exactly. But you know what? That night on the metro, that was funny because I remember it was St. Valentine's like 2 years ago. Like I remember thinking maybe he just got blown off by his girlfriend or something. But it was after a Cascao class, and I know Cascao, and his classes are, oh my god, grueling.
Jungle.
Yeah, jungle, exactly, 100%. But yeah, and I'd gone for a poutine right after, so I was not in the fighting mood. I'm exhausted. I'm
fries, cheese, and gravy. Yeah, I understand.
It's just like, this is not. I was more annoyed that you're making me like do some kind of more physical activity than I want to on the metro right now than anything else. Like,
That's really funny.
But back to the thing, as much as we want to like avoid fighting, it's always really nice to know that, you know what, I've got this confidence that's not just, smoke up my ass. I know I can handle myself. And that gives you a real kind of confidence in everyday life too. Like whether it's just arguing with someone or like, somebody's giving you shit, like you said, like even in traffic or at the mall or whatever. It's like, you don't have to take people's shit as much. It seems,
unless they pay your salary, and that's a different story.
Even there, it's like I've gotten in arguments with bosses where it's been like, you know what, it would never come to that, but the fact I know I can choke this guy out in 5 seconds, it makes me a little more at ease with like these confrontational situations.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Like, it's a funny feeling, but it's great.
Yeah, that's good. So tell everyone, Alain, where they could find you on Facebook, where they could find your school and everything.
Oh, yeah, on Facebook. That's a good question. It's Brazilian Top Team Canada, Laval. But the actual address is a series of numbers of, here, I'm checking right now. I think you just find it that way, though. Brazilian Top Team Canada, Laval. Yeah, that's it. And the school is at 1545 Boulevard Le Corbusier. It's in the Galerie Laval. Like, it's right next to Archambault, if anyone knows Laval. But it's weird because that's a whole strip mall, and it's like a small mall inside the strip mall.
Okay.
So it's but it's number 15 once you're in the mall. In other words, like you walk in through the front door and you turn right, and it's at the end of that hall. But I just ordered a new what's it called? Like those. Like
a banner?
Yeah, it's like a fold-out banner that you just pull down. So I should have that in a couple days. So I'll put it in the hallway for people to see, like,
nice.
When they walk in. But yeah, first classes free as always. I bring extra gis. I usually have 3 or 4 on hand, so we should be good. And I already have a couple regulars that are always fun. And only 2 classes in so far, but it's been a blast. Like shout out to Justin and Angry Monkey and his crew, because like he brought up like, a few of his boys for the first class, and I had a lot of friends like Brock and Sebastian, like, great group of people that came the first night. It was a lot of fun.
Nice. Great. So if anybody wants to check them out, go on Facebook, Brazilian Top Team Laval. You'll be able to find the group there. You could also follow Alain Savoie on Facebook and do a little friend request, and you can see what's going on in his life and with Jiu-Jitsu. So Alain, thanks very much for being on the podcast, and you're welcome back anytime, buddy.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
You've been listening to Let's Talk Jiu-Jitsu with Raymond Terrence. Go follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube page. Turn on notifications and press that like button. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the mats.